All right, so I drew this a little bit more, worked on it for probably about 30 minutes. I'm fairly comfortable with the proportions that I have down and the angles, and I'm just going to go ahead and start painting, and I'm kind of realizing where I'm sitting compared to where the camera is. The pepper is just a bit at a different angle because I was sitting a little bit more to the right. So if you're wondering what the heck happened there. Okay, now that I got that down, what I'm going to be doing is putting down average values. So I want to say to myself, where is my whitest white? Where is my darkest dark? And when I look at this, my darkest dark is probably the inside of the boot. And my lightest light is definitely going to be the highlights of the pepper or other little glints of highlight that you see. Everything else between those two is basically a gray scale and or a gray variance of gray in between. And you want to start with those average values when you start painting, not immediately your whitest white or your darkest dark, because when you put in the average, you can push and pull a little lighter or darker as needed as you start looking at your value relationships when you're painting. Okay, so that being said, my advice is always take a photograph of what you're looking at, because sometimes when you're looking at color, it's really hard to analyze how dark or light something is. So I'm just going to start into the pepper here. I'm going to break it up into a shadow shape, and I'm also going to break it up into a light shape. I'm going to pull out my palette. All right, so I'm mixing, trying to get an average value here. I'm looking at the shadow. It looks like my paint has dried out just a wee bit more than I wanted it to. Okay, so I'm looking at those shadows, and I'm saying to myself, okay, there's a shadow shape right here. And just a reminder, my paint is really thin right now. I'm not caking any kind of amount of paint on at the moment. Sorry, the camera just shifted a little bit right there. All right, so I'm looking at average values. Squinting your eyes also really helps. And I mean, I'm not going to go through this entire painting with you guys on this because it'll just, obviously it will take hours, and I don't think anybody has hours of time to be watching this. But we're just going to try to get down the very basics here. I'm squinting my eyes. I'm trying to analyze the separation of shadow shape, light shape as I'm going along. Okay, I have this shadow here in the stem of the pear. I probably can just treat this all one value right here. Okay. Now I need to analyze the light shape that I have here, so I'm just going to lighten it up. So it's not white, but we're going to be putting in a light gray right here. I'm going to be working towards those highlights. Let's see, and I need to put just a tad more paint thinner in that. What I've just mixed. It's just a hair too thick at the moment. Blurring your eyes always helps, or squinting. It helps you analyze those values so much easier. Okay. I can even work on a little bit of the background. So the white, the background is fairly light. I'm just going to mix up some paint here. And then when I have those two values up against each other, then it's a lot easier for me to look at those value relationships of how light does this need to get, how much darker. And I'm thinking, looking at this right now and comparing to my still life, this definitely needs to get a lot lighter. All right, mix a little bit more. It still looks somewhat the same. Okay. Probably can graduate myself to a much bigger brush right now to cover up that area. Got a little, picked up a little gray there. So I'm just thinking about problems I'm going to be having as I'm working on this. This section right here with all the leaves, with the green leaves, it's just a chaotic mess over there. And, you know, like stems like this, it's okay to, you know, paint over it because you'll come back. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But I tried as much as I possibly could. Try to draw it as accurately as I can. I mean, there's a lot of problems to it, that's for sure. But as I'm painting in this background, you know, I'm just focusing on those negative spaces, those spaces in between the petals. And I'm not too worried about my edges being super clean right now. Kind of some rules on oil painting. You start, you know, pretty rough a little bit, and it's easier to make a messy edge cleaner than it is to have a really clean edge and try to make it a little bit more relaxed and messy. And so, I mean, I'll be coming back to this area for sure, but right now I'm just trying to get some values down, get an idea of how light or dark I need to make it. We'll be coming into those areas later. All right. Well, I'm just going to keep on painting just a little bit further, but that's just kind of the next step. So think about your breaking it up into light and shadow shapes. Think about your general values. The average value. There we go, that's better.